Good evening. Welcome to the Not So Perfect Bigfoot Show. I have my favorite person in the world, other than my husband, and that's Thom Cantrall is back with us.
Well,
Welcome back.
thank you so much. Thank you so, and I don't mind being number two to your husband. All right, that's as it should be. But yeah, I'm really tickled to be here again. It's always so much fun talking with you. Uh,
Thank you.
been a
That
long
means
time
a
since
lot.
I've been in North Carolina.
North Carolina. I love my state. It is
Hmm.
a blizzard. Well, it's cold one minute and then it is summer the next minute. And I tell people, I said I live in the most bipolar state in the world. You don't know what the weather's going to be one day to the next. And I
Right.
have I have bipolar tendencies, so I can say that without insulting somebody. So just ask my husband. So where we left off last time, you saw you were working at the California, uh, Oregon
I was,
border, seeing the
yeah, I
prints
was
going
working
up.
for a timber company right on the California-Oregon border, and I was running the cutting crew, timber cutting crew, and although I'd been hired to run the road crew, they had some difficulties with the U.S. Forest Service, and we were delayed in road building, so they asked me if I would take over the cutting crew for a while. And that was a terrible job. All I did was keep good people from working. Because when I showed up, they wanted to stop and talk. And, no,
Imagine.
go back to, and these people were cutting trees that were, 8 to 14 feet in diameter, uh, huge timber. This was stuff I had never cut before. I've cut some big timber, but not like that. Those redwoods are gigantic, and it's a whole different system. So I was really kind of out of my place anyway, out of my comfort zone. And but one and it was a system where I had to drive a lot. I lived over on the coast, and of course the redwood cutters were close, but we had jobs going in the interior of the state, and it was like a 4.5, 5 hour job just to drive to the work site. So if I had to move a pair of cutters at 6 o'clock in the morning, I had to leave home well before daylight, before breakfast even. And then, in May, the snow started melting off some in the higher reaches, and we took a D7 cat in the west end of what's called the Go Road, Gasky to Orleans, Gasky, California to Orleans, California. And that cut the time down when the road was opened to about a 90-minute drive. Made it a lot easier to do. But we took a D7 cat in the west end, dumped him off at the snow line, and let him push snow out of the road until he got to the pavement on the east side, and then picked him up there and took him onto one of the road jobs we were doing there. And so it opened it up for us. The mid 25 or 30 miles was just a cat track. It was just, uh, you know, pushed out of dirt and rock. It was no real road to it. But uh, the both ends were paved, so that middle stretch wasn't too long a drive, but it was rough. It took 4-wheel drive to do it, and so I was making that drive one morning early. I knew I had to lay over that night in our camp in the Orleans area, and then meet the Forest Service the next morning. And so I was planning on doing that. I got right to the top of the mountain, and there was still snow on both sides of the road where the cat had pushed it off the road. And I saw this set of tracks coming down the hill and crossing the road, and then going down into the canyon below. And I thought, from the distance, when I first saw them, I thought it was probably bear tracks. And there's a lot of bear in that area, and it's just the time of the year they're coming out of hibernation, and they're waking up hungry and wandering around looking for food. And of course, that time of the year, most of their food is the fresh grass that's growing. But as I got to them, I realized that's no bear. It was humanoid tracks, And so I stopped and I had to, check them out. Followed them a little ways off the road and then back to my little truck again. And as much as I would have loved to sort of stopped and tracked them then, you don't keep a $2 million logging job waiting just because you want to go chase Sasquatch. So uh, as much as I
That's
would
hard.
have liked to, that really wasn't kosher. And so I marked it, I flagged it, and went on, did what I had to do, spent the night. I knew the next morning I just had to meet the Forest Service to plan the next road into our next logging unit. And then I could be gone. Well, meeting the Forest Service means you're not going to see anybody before 9 o'clock because they get to work at 8 and have to have coffee before they leave. And, we've got a half a day in by the time they get to the road, to the job site. But we got done what we needed to do, and I bid them farewell and headed back up the mountain again. Got up there and found where he had crossed, and you could still see the tracks in the snow very well. And so I parked my little truck back out of the way. I knew everybody was going to be coming back that way that night, being Friday, it was Friday night. And so I parked out of the way and took my pack, and took off after him. And I hiked all afternoon, got down into the bottom, I believe it was Blue Creek Canyon, which is the next ridge over from Bluff Creek where Patty was filmed. And I got down in there, and it was getting late, and there was these big burned out fir tree stumps. They were 8.5 foot through, and hollow in the middle. I said, that'd make a wonderful tent, wouldn't have to fool with the tent or anything. And so I just threw my sleeping bag out in there and started a little fire. I walked up the creek, 100 yards or so to make sure there was no dead deer laying in the creek. That's a real scary moment when you decide to take your water out and then walk up the creek and there's a dead animal laying in it. So you checked that out first and came back, and everything was fine. And got my dinner started, and was sitting there, and I heard a howl. Ooh, I don't do them very well. My throat's old. But this long, low howl. And then immediately from the other side, came from the ridge behind me, I heard its answer. And then again, and back again. And they're talking back and forth. And they kept getting closer and closer and closer to where I was. And I finally found out that I could, it was getting dusk and getting darker and darker. It got to the point where I could just see the shapes as they walked in front of the timber behind the clearing area. And so I moved around so I had the fire at my back, because if you're looking into the fire, you will never be able to see into the darkness. So you put it at your back and let the light shine around you. And I could see him. I could make him out pretty well walking along there. And what it was a male that came down from one side and a female and a youngster came down from the other side. And yeah, and they were paying attention to me in that tree stump. And when I first got into it, I found these long black hairs, and I thought I was just I had disturbed a bear's hibernation. But I figured I'd be gone before he came back in the fall anyway, so it wouldn't be a big problem. But I don't think it was a bear that I'd disturbed. I think I was probably in their spot, because they were paying close attention to me. And I spoke to them like I always do. Somebody says, if you see one, what do you do? I just talk to them, Hi there, guys. How are you doing today? My name's Tom. I'm here, and I'd really like to get to know you. I'd like to learn from you if I could. And then, they'd look, and just it was really, really intriguing to watch. And the male was trying so hard to communicate. It was, how when you speak to somebody that doesn't speak your language, the first thing you do is slow down and enunciate really clearly, like that's going to help. Well, that's kind of what he was doing. Yeah, it was the samurai type chatter talk that you'll hear on Ron Moorhead's tapes, on the Sierra Sound tapes. But he was looking right at me and doing it. I know he was trying to communicate with me. Uh, there was no mind speak done at that time, not at all. That all came about years later. But he was very much trying to speak to me. And while he was trying to speak to me, the youngster, he's probably 7, 8, 9 years old, somewhere right in there, he had a stick in his hand and he'd run up and he'd rap the tree I was in. Whack! And his mother would wave back to go off, take off. Then he'd sneak back in again and rap the tree again. We were having a good time, he and I. And this went on most of the night. I sat up and watched, and finally, I don't know, sometime before daylight, I was just, I'd worked all day, and, hadn't slept much the night before, and I was tired. And so I told him, I said, I've got to catch a little sleep here. I'll be gone this morning. You can have your house back if that's what I've done. I apologize. So I did. I just laid down, slept for a couple hours until daylight, woke up, but they were gone. But there were a myriad of tracks around. They were under 3 sizes, so my assumption was correct. And so I just packed up and left and hiked back out and went home. But that was such an experience, such a wonderful experience. They just were so deep in my heart. And I found that howl since then. I just found this recently. 2 years ago, one of our members recorded one down in the Blue Mountains of Oregon, out of Tollgate area, and long, drawn out howl like that. And I got the idea through another researcher to slow that down. And when we did, we slowed it down and it came out a perfect waveform. And in my book, Sasquatch the Proof, I have 3 waveforms shown there. Number 1 is that one in its normal tone, then slowed way down. Then compared to it, from the Sierra Sounds, and slowed down. If you remember Scott Nelson, when he first started working with Ron Moorhead's tapes, he had to slow them down over 50% before he started getting the morphine streams, the syllables, before they started showing up. They speak way too fast for us. And then I took one of my own. And if you looked at them, you couldn't tell which one was which.
Wow.
Okay.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So what it is it's language. It's in that howl, they are communicating. They are speaking to one another over distance. And very, very important to know. Very important to understand. We had another incident in that same area. Actually, we had several, but I never got a chance. I left that job immediately as soon as I found another one. I left that job because, like I said, I really hated what I was doing. It was just all I was doing was keeping good people from working. And so I went on. I always wanted to get back there. That was in 1978 that happened, May of 1978. I didn't get back there till 2014. So it was a long time coming. But we decided the, big find, or no, a Bigfoot organization that was headed by Susie Madish was having a camp out in Willow Creek area. Well, as it turned out, they were camping in a campground practically in downtown Willow Creek, and that's not for me. But I said, what I'll do, I'll set up a spike camp up in the mountains, and anybody who wants to come up can spend time with us up there. And that's what I did. I went back to that area. Went in the east end of that same go road to the end of it, to where it now stops entirely, because they made it in the interim. They made that area between where the cat track was. They made that all into wilderness area, and there's about 30 miles of paved road in their wilderness area, but they don't pay any attention to that. They wanted to preserve it, and that's what they did. But Elk Meadows is right at the end of that road, and it's a beautiful spot. It's the headwaters of Blue Creek, and as you're going in, driving in the go road, you're following Bluff Creek along the bank, but on the north bank. And Bob and Roger, when they got their film, they had gone in on the south bank of Bluff Creek. We were on the north bank, and then at the end of the road at milepost 31, we set up our camp, and we had 100 acres there to camp in, which suits us just fine because we like to spread out and have our tents separate and apart from one another, because it encourages especially the youth to come in and play at night. And it's fun listening to them and interacting with them. And so June 12th, I think it was, we arrived there, set up camp, and we were there for 12 days, camped there for 12 days. And in that time, some of the people from downtown came up and spent time with us, spent a night, and had a great time. And we had 5 different face-to-face encounters on that trip, and of different people. A couple of them that I'll talk about that are probably more important than the others. We had gone to town for gas for our heater. That's about 5,800 feet elevation there. You don't want to be at night in early to mid-June without your tent heater. I guarantee you, it will let ice on the water bucket every night. And so it was nice to have that tent heater. And so I got just a little 5-gallon propane tank, and filled up and hook up my heater to it, leave it outside and the tent heater inside, and it kept my tent nice and warm. And I always had company with my tent. Whoever was up stayed in there. And Jackie, we had a visitor over from England. Jackie Tonks was her name. And Jackie was there. She stayed in my tent too. I've got a tent big enough to house about 8 people. They say it's an 8-person tent, but 3 of them would have to be consenting adults if you were to put 8 people. but it handles 5 really well. You like that one, huh?
I wasn't expecting that, Tom. But carry
on. At any rate, we were coming back in the go road. It was getting on towards evening. It was, of course, this is June, so it's the longest days of the year. But it was about 7 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock. And I was pushing because I love driving those roads, and I cut my teeth on logging roads. And so I was pushing hard to see how fast I could get it. It's normally a 2-hour drive, and I wanted to make it an hour and a half. And milepost 14, I come around a sharp curve, and right in front of us, there's 2 Sasquatch standing on the road. And I hit the brakes to stop because I'd have hit them otherwise.
Wow.
And Jackie was in the passenger seat. Arla Collette was in the back seat. And she was kind of snoozing at the time. And she said she was snoozing. I don't know whether she was snoozing or praying, but because I was moving pretty fast on that road. And I got it stopped. We were about 20 feet from him when I stopped. And Jackie, just as loud as her voice could go, Bigfoot! her eyeballs were about that big around a piece. And they turned and crossed back, and they were about 2/3 of the way across the road, right in the middle of my lane. They turned and they walked back across the road 2 steps, gone over the bank. And just as they disappeared in my mind, what came, I'm the one you know as Patty. This is my son. And bang, they were gone. And we started on back to camp then. It was 20 miles from there. Milepost 14 back to our camp at milepost 34. And in that 20 miles, oh, Arla woke up just to see him as they went over the bank. And there's a big madrona tree there, and they had it whipping back and forth because they grabbed onto it as they went over the bank. But we checked out footprints and such like that. And the bank is steep, and where it went over the bank there, that drops right down into the very headwaters of Bluff Creek.
Wow.
As the crow flies, we were 3.5 miles from the spot where Bob and Roger filmed Patty's film. Okay, and that was down the canyon, 3.5 miles, and we started back to camp. In the 20 miles from where we left that sighting to the time we got back in camp, Jackie had convinced herself she had not seen 2 Sasquatch cross the road in front of her. She had seen 2 Mexican drug mules carrying and wearing long-haired ghillie suits, flip-flops, and backpacks. This became, to me, a very fascinating psychological thing. Our minds won't accept what they don't know if they have something logical to replace it with. And I watched her do that. Her mind went from, that's a Sasquatch, that's a Bigfoot, to 2 Mexican fellows carrying drugs. Because her mind didn't know what a Sasquatch was, but it knew what Mexican drug mules were. It didn't know what a long-haired body was, but it knew what a ghillie suit was. And it didn't know what Osman pads were on the bottom of the feet, which just shone like they had a flashlight on them. But she knew what flip-flops were. And her mind just retreated to that. Okay.
So I get the part where her mind retreated to that, but you were literally scared the bejesus out of her. Would you drive it too, Thom?
Oh,
So
she was
had a
hanging
double
on.
whammy on, and poor Arlo, when she woke up, she was probably in the floorboard.
I did stop quick. I will say that. You know what Jackie did to me when we drove down there? I picked her up at the airport in Portland and drove down to Northern California. And as we were going over the mountains to go into this place the first time, she took a piece of paper and wrote her name and next to kin and everything, put it in the suitcase in the glove box in case we had action. I said, there's confidence, But so yeah, she may have been bothered by my driving too. But
to say the least.
Yeah, about 2 or 3 days later, we were talking about this around the campfire, and Arla says, Jackie, do you realize that you've traveled 6,000 miles from England to see what you saw, and now your mind's not letting you see it? And she got thinking about that and got working on it. And before we left camp, it had returned to her that, yeah, that's what she saw. She'd seen Sasquatch. And today she realizes that entirely and is quick to tell the whole story. I talk to her quite regularly, even yet. And yeah, it's been a fantastic trip. Another incident that happened, that same expedition, Kathy Blunt was with us. And Kathy's a good friend, been a good friend for a lot of years. And whenever I go camping, all I have to do is, Kathy, we're good, and she's there. But she always puts her tent way away from everybody else so that the youngsters will come around and play with her at night. And about the 3rd night in camp, she comes to the fire, and her eyes look like 2 burnt holes in a blanket. I mean, she has had no sleep whatsoever. And Arla says, "What's the matter, Jackie? You're not getting any camp?" Arla had come out from Oklahoma for this outing. "You're not getting any sleep?" She says, "No, those kids won't let me. They keep me awake all night long, playing with my tent and poking me through the tent and talking and chattering." Arla says, "Kathy, you can tell them to leave you alone, that you need sleep, and they'll leave you alone." She says, "Will they? I can do that?" And Arla says, "Yes, you can." She says, "Okay, guys, tonight I need to sleep. Go play with Nancy." Well, Nancy and Russ they slept in hammocks, and they were down from us, so 200 yards further down. Poor Nancy. That's the night the term Sasquatch pinata came into use, because what they would do, they left Kathy alone, but they went down there and they'd run by it and they'd swat him on the butt in the hammocks like a pinata. And this went on all night long. And one of them was going to run right at Kat, and Nancy saw him, and she said, "Oh, please don't scare me, don't scare me." So, and he didn't. He just turned and walked away then. So I thought that was pretty appropriate. But Kathy, our last night in camp, next to last night, I think, in camp, she and I sat at the fire late talking, and it was 11 o'clock or better before we decided to go to bed. My tent was closest to the campfire, so I just went over and started getting undressed to get in bed. They always tease me about my mattress. I had a 16-inch high air mattress, and Sue called it my princess mattress, so I couldn't feel the pee.
I remember that one.
Okay. They have no respect, you know. I'm Rodney Dangerfield. I get no respect.
It must be your driving, Thom.
It must be my age. At any rate, Kathy finished up at the fire, made sure the fire was down, and put things away, and then she headed for her tent, and it was just right across the road from mine, but awful ways. And all of a sudden, I had my foot in bed and was just starting to sit down, and I hear, "Thom, Thom, 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 come help me! I can't move." "I'll be right there, Kathy. Let me up and put my clothes back on." So I put my pants on. I didn't even put shoes on. I just put my pants on, went out, and here's Kathy bent over. She can't even lift her head all the way. I said, "What happened, Kathy?" She said, "All I saw was like two great big redwood logs." I said, "What happened?" "I came around a curve going to my tent, and I surprised the Sasquatch, and he was standing right there, like 10 feet away. And he froze me in this position." And that's what she was. She was bent over and could not even raise her head. So I looked up, and back behind her tent was a little Port Orford cedar tree. And he was standing next to that. And he was about 11 feet tall. He's a big guy. And I said, "Oh, hi there, fella. That's all right. I've got her now. You can release her in my custody. I'll make sure she's okay." You got to remember that freezing in position, that's a safety thing. Okay. He froze her, then he could turn around and walk away. If she'd have panicked, she could have run off a bank there. I mean, there's straight cut stream banks there that are 8-10 feet deep. And if she'd have taken off running in the middle of the night, she could have run into one of those very easily. And so that stops her. She can't move. Then he gets out of sight. Then he can release her, and she's more calm then. She won't run away. So I got there by her and put my hand on her shoulder and I said, "That's all right. I got her now." And it was so funny because I could hear him and I could hear her. They were both apologizing to one another, and neither one was listening to the other one. I'm trying to keep from laughing because I know she's shook up, but it's so darn funny. And finally, he did. He released her, and he'd moved back out of sight by then. And Nancy said later, she said she heard it and was going to come help. Uh, then she heard me talk to him. She's always, he's got it under control. I don't have to get out of bed now. But I told her I was just go get your cack out of your tent and throw it in mine. And you can spend the night in there. There's room. And she did. She didn't sleep all night, but she sat there all night thinking about it. And the neat thing about this, I wrote about it in one of my books, and she wrote about it in hers as well. So you get it from both sides there, and it's pretty cool to read both versions of it. You know, both from both sets of eyes. And that was one experience. Another one, Arla and I just sitting there at camp, talking and having a drink. Arla sings a lot, and she is so good. I mean, she sings Patsy Cline better than Patsy did. And
oh, Patsy Cline.
Oh yes, and Arla actually was a professional performer at like 4 and 5 years old. Her dad was a musician, and she sang on stage. Yeah, and she's related to the Guthries, Arlo and Woody Guthrie. They're cousins. Mm-hmm. And
wow.
Yeah, and she's a marvelous person. She's been my sis for so many years now, and I've learned so much from her. We've had so many adventures together, driving down to the middle of Mississippi and Alabama, headed to Georgia, and just laughing our fool heads off. We're the two oldest people in the camp in the middle of
the night. Those are the days you can hang your boots up on, aren't they?
Those really are. I'll tell you a story about that Georgia camp. We, at any rate, finish what I was saying here. We were sitting there just talking, looking up on the hill, and there's two Sasquatch watching us. Just standing by a tree watching us, you know. Just that's how magic that place was. Wow. Some of the kids came up from the camp in town and had a face-to-face right on the road. One of the ladies had come over from Australia for it, and she was so funny. She had a gift left for her. We had gone to bed that night. She got up the next morning, wandered around, picked a little bouquet of flowers, wildflowers. And there was a log laid down across the creek. Actually, there were two of them side by side, two big fir logs across the Blue Creek. They had a Blue Creek there. And she was going to lay those flowers on that log for them. And as she went to set them down, here was a little toy Ford Thunderbird car, 1956 Thunderbird car, one of the little Matchbox type cars. It was all worn up. The wheels were off of it. But when they said that she flew into LA and it was picked up there, and then they drove north from there. And all the way, every time they stopped, she'd look for a secondhand store because her husband collected those. And
wow.
They're hard to find in Australia. So here she's in camp. She goes to lay those flowers down, and here it is sitting there on the log. If you can believe that. Yeah.
Well, and, may I ask?
Sure.
I hate to interrupt you, but also I'm simple-minded. I forget my questions. But what you're saying about them knowing that, it's like they knew she was looking for us.
Absolutely.
Like they knew. So with that in itself, then let's go back to where you said you heard the woos in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Quick, two scenarios I'm gonna throw at you, and I'm gonna have them on which they think you're, awesome anyway, like I do, so I know they're gonna watch this. Had a friend named Philip Palmer. Quick scenario: his brother passed. Took it really hard. Mm-hmm. Walked into the woods. He sat down. He broke down and cried. He let it out of his system. Coming back down the trail, he found a flower. Second scenario. Don't think there's
he found a what?
He found a flower that had just been broken two laying in the couldn't find them anywhere around. It was laying there. Second thing, Brian Barber, just had him on my show. It's the last show I did. He lost his friend, and he went in the woods, and he just had a release of grief. And in the background, he could hear a woo, two of them. What is your take on that? No one, I guess, with them leaving the little car there, and this woman, yeah, I just don't even know what to say, Tom. You take it away, brother.
I wish I knew how they knew. They knew that she was looking for that type of thing. Where do they keep those? Do they have a locker that they keep them in? The flowers.
Wow.
I've seen that so many times. So many times. I was with a friend and her two daughters. And her daughters, it was their first trip with us, the older daughter. She was married and had two children. And she so wanted some type of contact. We had driven down this logging road to the end of it, turned around and came back out. And right in the middle of the road where we had just driven down was a little bouquet of flowers, 3 or 4 of them together,
Wow.
wrapped with a paper towel on the stem,
Wow.
laying right in the middle of the road. A set of tracks to it and gone. How did they know? It happened. Jamie
I believe it.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe it, which goes back to the little version I told you where I found the snake skin.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm here. I survived. It's okay.
Yeah.
And so, wow. I say wow so much on this show, but wow. So we were going back, and you told me one time, and I guess what brings this to mind is when your friend was frozen and she couldn't move. I don't know how they do that, but I also know you had an incident where you're having heart problems one night.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Yeah. That was. Do you want me to tell that story now?
Absolutely, because it kind of ties in perfectly.
Okay. We were. I was camped with some of the old Oregon Bigfoot people, Autumn Williams group. Jeff Rohn, Jim DeMaine was there. Ernie Warga was there. I can't remember. Robin and I can't remember everybody's name right now off the head. But there were 10 in camp. And my friend Sue, now Brian Bland's wife, was there. She and I shared a tent. And of course, our tent was over right at the end of a logging road, right on the landing is where we camped, overlooking the clear cut. And there's probably 10, 15-year-old reprod timber coming in there. Beautiful sight. And they were around us at night. And the second day there, I was feeling terrible. My heart's in atrial fibrillation 100% of the time. That particular day, it was not even running well for atrial fib. I was so weak I could hardly move. And I told Jim DeMaine that I would probably have to go home the next day, at least get to a doctor at least. And that night we're in our tent, and I woke up well before daylight, and there's a buzzing coming. Zzz sound. And Sue was sitting up. I said, "Where's that buzzing come from?" Or she says, "Where's that buzzing coming from?" I said, "It's coming right out of my chest, right there." And I can show you, I've got a picture of that spot the next day, and it's burned there.
Wow.
Okay. They were somehow treating my heart, because when I woke up, I felt 1,000,000% better. It wasn't in sinus rhythm, and never has been. It stays in fibrillation, but it was fibrillating regularly and strongly. I was still pumping blood well. Next time I saw my doctor, he said, "I can't believe that you're fibrillating." He says, "Your blood flow is so good, it's like your heart was running totally normal." And that
Wow.
happened from what they did there. To follow that story through, when daylight came, I got up and I walked over to the fire, and Jim DeMaine was standing there. He says, "What were you and Sue doing walking through camp in the middle of the night talking?" As we weren't. Sue did look outside, but I never got out of bed, and she never left the tent. And he said, "Well, we could hear you, walking through camp and talking." And then Jeff gets up, same question. Ernie got up, same question. Robin got up, same question. 10 times, same question. Finally, I said, "Well, if we were walking through by this time," pardon me, Sue had joined us, and I said, "If we were talking, what were we saying?" "Well, we couldn't understand words, but you and Sue both have a very distinctive voice, and it was you two talking. So we got looking for tracks. Here's two sets of 116, 114-inch set of tracks
Oh,
walking from my tent to the fire and right up the Logan Road.
wow.
They were imitating our voice." And yeah,
I've heard that before.
yeah.
I've
And
heard it.
yeah, that was an absolutely fantastic. Then a week or weeks later, the same crew of us were up on the Continental Divide, where we were in water that ran over on this side of the ridge, went to the Pacific Ocean. The one that hit on this side of the ridge went to the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, this side's Montana and this side's Idaho, and they did the same thing, but they didn't do it while Sue was in the tent. But they did the same thing, and they did it a much shorter version of it. Just a few minutes later. I thought it was they were just tweaking it a bit,
Wow, that's
And
wow. So, so you then at some point you went to Canada and you
yeah,
witnessed.
I did a 5-year study in Canada on structures and glyphs. Let me take a drink here. My throat's
You're
hanging up.
fine. Take your time. I think I'll take one with you. Cheers, sir.
Mm.
All
I had two because I knew that one was going to run out.
right. It's fine.
Canada, yes. Brian Bland, Sue, and I did a 5-year study up there on their glyphs and their structures. And the reason we did it there is because that area where he lives, where Brian lives, the ground in the timber, it's in a park, and it's just like a park, only it's moss. And there's no underbrush, just ferns here and there. And the clan is so approving, so much fun to be around. The ones we know, the clan leader, Arishna, his daughter, uh, and her mate I knew her before she took a mate, and afterwards even got to watch her twins being born. And
Wow.
yeah, and then a couple of the younger ones are just so much fun. But yeah, we I wish I'd had my pictures up. I could have shown you this, but we learned a lot up there. I learned a tremendous amount. And then I went back up there and got to talk to the daughter, and she wanted me to talk to her and told me where to meet her. And I was with a group where Brian and Sue and another couple and another fellow, and we were all hiking together that day. And I had my walker, and they came to a spot they wanted to go, and I knew where I had to be. It was on that trail, and but I didn't want to go any further. Well, fortunately, it turned uphill there, and I said, "No, I'm just going to wait for you here." Oh, we won't go there. No, no, you guys go ahead. Please go, And it was raining. Oh, it was pouring that day. So I just sat over under a big fir tree and let them go. And they just got out of sight. And here she came out. And she was so unusual looking. This is how I learned how they go about taking a mate. But she talked to me and just wanted to, let me know these things. But when it comes time for them to take a mate, they have a meeting twice a year of clans. At those clan meetings, they decide, it's kind of like a regional meeting, who in the region needs a mate, who in the region is ready to have a child, because they limit their child rearing to once every 7 years, 6 to 7 years, so they don't
Wow.
overpopulate, holds their population down.
That
Because
makes
they know
sense.
they can't build a population and stay hidden. Okay. So also, because they have a low population, the chances of inbreeding are so high. So when it's time for her to have want a mate, it goes to this meeting. Who is ready to take it? What male is ready to take a mate? Well, fortunate in Oklahoma, that's far enough away. She goes to Oklahoma to visit him to see if they're compatible. While she was there, and I found this out after this event, I was telling Arla about it and how unusual she looks because she's the only one I've ever seen that has blue eyes. Also, she has a haircut that looks like a flat top. She has the
Joe
the
Dirt.
sagittal crest, but her hair, the way her hair grows, it looks like a cut into a flat top. And Arla says, "I saw her." She says, "I said, let me get my notes." She went and got her notebook, came back, and she read it back, and it was verbatim what I'd been looking at. She had seen her
Wow.
when she was there meeting Forstner. Then she and Forst came back to Canada to her home clan to live. And at that time, he was a young man, very tall. His father is 15 feet tall. Arla knew him very, very
Wow.
well, and get her to tell you the story about that. And our whole camp saw that one. Bunch of people sitting on the porch of the cabin we'd rented, and Arla's walking the trail, and he's walking behind her. And see if this 15-foot tall creature walking behind her. And
Wow.
yeah, and so I finished my conversation with her. They came back, and then the rest of the crew came back. And what'd you do while we were gone? I was going to look by that big rock right over there, and here's these footprints all around it. You lucky here. Well, I hate to tell you this, but I was asked to stay here. So I did. Yeah, that was that. Yeah. But we spent
She
5
eventually
years.
had
She
she
had
eventually had twins.
she had twins. She's the one I was invited to view the birth of her twins up there. And then last September, I returned to Canada, and I hadn't been up there since before COVID. And I spent a few days up there, and she wanted me to come back to this particular place. So I had some of my ladies that I guide and I'm an advisor for that were there, and I asked them, "Oh, I got a place I want to show you." I said, so we drove over there, and I sent them on a walk, and here she came out. She had not only had the twins, but she had her latest one. The twins were 9 years old on the 15th of January,
Wow.
and she has a
That
2-year-old, and
wow.
yeah, yeah, and but those twins when they're born are so absolutely darling. About maybe 2 feet 3 inches long, 24 to 27, 28 inches long, and just a ball of fur. Just so cute, just unbelievably cute. And
But you
but
worked for that trust.
well, I've spent it's been 65 years I've been working with these guys now.
Um,
Okay, yeah, I work for that trust. I
yes,
didn't.
sir.
I don't take pictures unless I have permission. Not ever. I don't even take pictures of the woods where they are unless I have permission. And I respect is everything. Respect is everything. The first time I had a conversation with my teacher, Akinisha, he said, I do not understand humans. They have no respect. They do not respect where they live. They do not respect one another. And
Mhm.
most importantly, they do not even respect themselves. And he's right. He's right. Respect is so rare in this world. And respect is everything. There's nothing without respect.
Wow. I agree with you 100%, but that's also, you know, what you carried with you through all of the years you put in this to have those experiences. Your first one was fraught with fear. Always have your back by the campfire and respect. That's
Yeah.
pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're ticking down on our time when you probably need to give your voice a break. I just want to show people what I got in the mail. And I want you to tell folks where they can get this. And you did something really special. Tom's book, y'all. You did something really special and you made this out to my best friend. And I hope she don't see this because I just ruined the surprise. But
The that book is actually that's pretty nitty gritty of Sasquatch and how they live. It goes into these healing stories that I was telling you about
mhm.
in depth, and tells you about Sasquatch in depth. That's a pretty important book. Sasquatch from myth to mystery, because that's what they've done to me. They've gone from being a myth to being a mystery, and I
And you can
love
get
the
the
mystery.
and
And
you
you
can
can
get
get
this
that.
where
See my name there? Put a .com after it, and that's where you can find all 13 of my books. But that one, and the art is done by a friend of mine on that cover. Uh, I have the original painting here of that, and yeah, Mike Payton did that for me. And you can also get them off Amazon, Amazon.com, if you don't want to go through me. But if you go through me, you get them signed. And I want to
yes,
tell
sure
you,
do.
signing the book is part of the reward of writing a book. You know, that's why I don't like Kindle as much. People get really upset at you if you sign their screen.
You're just on a roll today, Tom.
But I
So,
do. I love writing. Now that's what I was. That was my job. That was first that same conversation I was telling you about with my teacher.
mhm.
We want you to be our scribe. Okay, that's where this came from. There are two or pardon me, golden eagles nests in the county I live in Washington. And I have the primary wing feather from one of those golden eagles. It was left in my bed for me, or left in my cart beside my bed for me one night in the middle of the night. And he says, "That's your mark to us as our scribe." And believe me, I keep that very dear to my heart. That's why I've written 13 books, not because I wanted to. I had written one book before I met my teacher. I've written 12 since then.
Wow.
See?
So I think that's incredible. And we still just have touched the surface. I know you wanted to go in actually all your books, how you met your teacher, the orbs and
Yeah.
UFOs. So we have so much more to cover.
Oh yeah,
So
we haven't even finished with Sasquatch stories yet.
yes, but this is your time, and we're going to do take it out as long as we because this is your story, Tom.
Thank you so
All the
much, dear. You
You're
guys are
welcome.
so- you guys have been so special to me. I just cannot. You and your family have just been in my heart.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you. What I did want to do today, we had talked about doing a tribute, and I want you to go ahead and get your tribute out. I'm going to give you the screen. Are you ready for it, or do you want to do it on the next one?
Tribute for what?
Yeah, tribute to your friends, tribute to someone in the Bigfoot world that would
Oh, yes, yes.
so
Uh,
if you,
yes, I'll do that right now.
all right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put you on the screen. I'm gonna give it to you. Take as much time as you need. Then we'll end the record and we'll make sure we get all the downloads. But I really want my husband to be able to come over here and say hello to you. The
I
second man in my, the
appreciate it.
first man in my life.
All
Then I'm gonna
right.
talk to the second man. All right, so
All
I'm gonna
right.
give you the screen time.
Uh-huh.
Get out of here.
You know, in this world of research, there are many types of people. Some have some beliefs, some have others. Anybody who puts their foot in the woods and works, I'm totally at ease with. Even if we don't agree, that's fine. We can agree to disagree. That's great. Experiences change. I can't tell you I'm 100% right. I can't tell you they're 100% wrong. One of the favorite of mine in this category is Dr. Jeff Meldrum. Jeff and I appear at a conference and we'll both speak. We will disagree with 60% of what one another says. Shake hands and go home friends. I brought this up to him one day and he says, you're right. He says, I'm sitting listening to you and I'm disagreeing with what you're saying, but you're saying it so darned articulately and so well that I find my head going up and down. I told him, I said, Jeff, whatever you do, listen to your head, not your heart, okay? And but that's the point. You can disagree without being disagreeable. Now, of those who I do follow closely, there's a couple that stand out. Today, I want to talk about one that I met only recently, just a few years ago. Arlie, you've heard me discuss, and she deserves every kudos I can give. But today isn't her day. Today it's Squatching with Barb and Gabby, who's now Barb and Goldie since Gabby passed away on us, and Goldie is coming on now. Barb lives just up the road from me, 20 minutes or so, in, at the foot of Mount Rainier in western Washington. She lives in an area that is rife with Sasquatch. But even more than that, she's made herself ready to accept them. Somebody showed a picture here just recently of a group of Sasquatch, all males, all standing together. And Barb made the statement that somebody told her that picture looked like her uh, backyard 30 minutes after the lights went out because she has visitors every night now, virtually every night. All she has to do is walk across the street from her little cabin, across the road, and there's a trail that begins and goes up into the woods, up on the mountains. She walks out almost daily and has the most wonderful outings that you've ever could imagine in your life. She usually takes Goldie with her, sometimes running freely, sometimes on a leash. Now, recently, she's had some new things invade. Things that look all for the world like little fairies. I think what they are is whatever it is that early people saw that the idea of fairies came from. Because boy, do they look like it. Wings, the whole 9 yards. Somebody says, oh, they're just insects. No, no. There are no insects out in January. There's snow on the ground. Okay? But they're still there. They fly very, very rapidly. We timed one. It flew between 120 and 160 feet and we timed it on the camera, on the recorder, at 0.4 seconds. If she's only flew 120 feet in 0.4 seconds, that's 205 miles an hour. There's no insect, no bird, no animal that we know of that flies that fast. Okay? Barb is a master leader for her research group. We have 4 to 5 campouts per year, and all of them are well organized, well supervised. Daily in the morning, everybody sits down and debriefs on what happened yesterday. If an event occurs, they reenact it. And you can't believe how well that has worked in the past. I want you to know, if you want somebody to follow, to learn from, all you have to do is go to YouTube, look up Barb Shoup channel, and watch any of the 600 videos there. 600 plus. She's magnificent. She's absolutely magnificent. And I want to thank her very much for being my friend. Thank you.